Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we have ourselves a track by an act named Relentless Pursuit, titled You're Still Saving Me. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the track on the screen on YouTube and we're going to listen through it from start till finish. And we're going to hear what we think. Let's go! You're Still Saving Me, music and lyrics, guitar and bass, vocals and piano, drum loop production, all by Matthew Conrad, aka Relentless Pursuit. Okay, cool. It's incredible that people are able to do all of this themselves nowadays, you know what I mean? It's testament to the advancements in the audio technology, but also the ingenuity of the musicians for taking advantage of it. I am familiar with the synth from Relentless Pursuit stuff, as well as the harp. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Legend of Zelda, you know what I mean? I've noticed something important. I do like the sound of the guitar and the drums, but I also look at that SM7B, right? And I've noticed you can't see it. Hang on a minute. You can see that the SM7B has got the little mesh filter off this thing, which is fascinating to me. I didn't know that you could do that. That's really cool. I suppose if you really want like a kind of raw tone from your vocals, you can do that. I'm happy with the way the guitars sound, you know? The leads are kind of pretty. The drums are relentless with those kicks. There's an interesting tone to his voice. There's an interesting kind of vibrato that's going on, and I can't really put my finger on what it is that's going on there. It has a really fascinating tone to it. It contrasts well with what's going on with those drums and the other softer elements of the composition so far. The melodies are pretty though. They work well with the strings that we've got. I mean, like being able to go from the sort of the head voice there to the growl side, that is solid. And I think that the way it's staged with the chord progression and the drum parts makes it a kind of a catchy single, you know? And I think the inclusion of those harps there is a nice texture to go alongside the guitar parts. There's these sub-layer synths which are helping as well. They add more depth in this verse part, instrumentally. It helps to kind of keep the listener engaged by adding more, just a little bit more to keep them interested in that story as well. I'm not sure if it's good that we're coming into the hook like that with the distorted guitars, because it doesn't feel as if there's any like oomph to that entrance, at least from what I'm hearing there. If I go back a little bit further, there is like a dominance of the kick here. Like we've got a lot going on, especially with the overdubs of the harmonies of the vocals.
When you think all hope is gone, look up. He's there with you.
When you think all hope is gone, look up, he's there with you. So are we talking about God or like a religious presence or something like that? Because if that's the case, I think that's dope. It would have been cool for the kicks to have had a little bit more of a click to them, just so that they kind of pierced through the mix a little bit more. You didn't need to have them like the kind of sort of the Steven Slate kind of like what's the sound? It's got like a kind of a click to it, but something in the middle of those two, even if you could like blend or something like that. It's often why they put those little pads on drum bass head skins, so that when the beater hits it, it kind of makes that kind of snappy sound. I do wonder what the music is trying to tell us, though. Why did we have a big kind of 16th note kind of breakdown-ish part there, or just a groove there, after the thing where he's talking about looking down on you? The flurry on the right side of the stereo field is interesting, with the strings and the piano parts and the synths. I think that like the vocalist would do well if he was to do like a side project with like a middle band and like focus on the growly vocals. Like his head voice is okay, and when he talked in his like normal voice, he had a nice deep one, but like it I think that his low growls are fantastic. If he can like maybe find another like musician to kind of collaborate with, that'd be dope, dude. Cool, man. That was You're Still Saving Me by Relentless Pursuit. Just full disclosure, I mean this in a very kind way. I can see that the title is You're Still Saving Me. Now, I'm unsure if this is meant to be spelt like that, as in you're still... I'm not sure if that's how that's meant to be spelt. So if I might have to get some clarification on that outside of the review. I would have thought there'd be an apostrophe there, because you are still saving me. But that's okay. Just I'll get clarification on that, all right? But this is my review, my conclusion of my review of Relentless Pursuit and their track You're Still Saving Me. What do I think this track is about? I think that this is about someone who is seeking an answer, and they found it spiritually. I think that the imagery that they discussed, where they spoke about the person looking down on them and being cleansed of the filth and everything like that, it indicates to me this is someone who is trying to find sort of like a way to heal from the stuff that they've been through, and they're looking to God or something similar to that for that ability to do so. And I think that's fantastic. You know, I mean, I'm not going to talk about my religious affiliations here. I may as well just say I'm agnostic, actually, because there's nothing wrong with saying you're whatever, you know. Everyone's got different beliefs, it's fine. I'm not sure if there's someone out there, but when someone says there is, and if they believe in that, if that makes them happy, I think that's great. You know, I think that's awesome. So it's really cool that Relentless Pursuit is discussing this in this track, and I'm glad that they managed to find a healing. I'm not entirely convinced with how the head voice was done in the chorus sections. Like, I like the melodies. There was just something in there that I'm not totally sure about. Some of the vibratos felt a little bit unnatural, and it could just be his style of voice, you know. I'm not a massive expert on how a vocal technique. I'm learning, but I'm not a massive expert on it, so there might be something going on that I'm not aware of. But yeah, I think that discarding that kind of the technique part, I mean, like, the growls were fantastic, and the talking part that came in that midsection was welcome as well. That's a nice change of pace. But yeah, no, the harmonies and melodies in that chorus section were great. I enjoyed listening to those. It was cool to hear the variation of those, and for it to be a little bit slower than what we've had in the past there, which is kind of nice. And I think that having that little kind of growl in the middle of each of the choruses there was kind of fun, because it just changed up the texture and the way it was, you know, by a thread part. It was unexpected, and it made it more interesting, because we could have just stuck with one style, but we're integrating them and putting them forward. But that's okay. The track of 5 minutes or so, it's definitely not a short track. I'm wondering if there could have been like a solo section over top of some of those kind of breakdowny bits. You know, that with the way that you know, Relentless Pursuit performs with the tightness of some of these guitar parts, I'm sure that we could put a guitar solo over one of those little breakdown bits. And I understand that the focus might be to have like the synths and the strings and the piano parts do that, but I think that when you've got guitar as a big focal point of the track, you have room to do that. Just switch it to the middle pickup, or like the middle position on the, and just wail away, man. Just have a different voice there. It's great. And you can maybe even have the other instruments kind of come up with that in the second half of that kind of breakdownish bit at the end. And then like have the lead guitar break with a big bend. And I know it's kind of overdone maybe, but I think that still would have been technically a little bit more sort of like preferential to having the nakedness of it. But maybe that's just a stylistic decision that Relentless Pursuit preferred, and obviously that's fine. I mean, they wrote it, so I'm assuming that's what they wanted, and that's fine. The drums, yeah, they performed well. I mean, I know they were programmed as, you know, the sequencing as per the earlier parts. They were quite busy in that intro section. We could have potentially had less kicks. I think that with the speed of the song later on, we didn't necessarily have to have that maintain that pace, but maybe he wanted it for contrast. So that's okay. So some of the fill parts were good. The bass guitar, if there was one, it sounded like there was something going on that low in the sub bass, but it was nicely tied into everything. The guitar parts, I'm wondering if we had the right amount of gain on those guitars, because they definitely sounded distorted. I'm wondering if we could have potentially lowered the gain on them by 0.5, just to make it a little bit tighter when we play through them. I'm not sure if that's a post-processing thing or if that's the tone of the actual instrument itself. But I think if we'd lowered the gain on those by 0.5 dB, it would have tightened up those rhythm parts and made them a little bit less sort of, it made them sort of cut through in the mix a little bit more. And it doesn't need to be a sharp tone, but I think just there was already so much legato stuff going on in the arrangement that having the guitars with that much distortion may or may not have been sort of detrimental to the experience. But aside from that, I mean, like the piano synth parts were interesting. We didn't have them all the time. We knew to vary them and kind of bring some in and not others, and etc. You know, and they had a nice mid to high range resonance there that was very pretty over top of the mid-range guitars, with the distortion, the bass, and the drums. It was a nice combination of elements, and it's one of the fuller compositions, or rather the fuller kind of compositions that I've heard from Relentless Pursuit. I think that it's great that we're exploring other instruments and bringing them together for more parts of the song than just like an outro part, you know. There's ways to integrate them throughout in a way that's classy and can boost the music, especially with the way that those pianos and synths, etc. worked with the harmonized vocals. It sounded really big, you know, it's great. The theme itself sounded like it had hope for the future, sounded as if it was thankful that there was still some pain that we were working through, but we were getting there. And I think that theme overall, with the chords and some of the extensions provided by those high sort of synth and string parts, articulated the lyrics well and matched well with the vocals. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering, for the most part, I was happy with it. I think the vocals were okay apart from the clean parts, which I'm still not sure about, the high voice there, just because the way there was something different to how I've heard him sound in the past, and I honestly prefer it when his vocals are a little bit more naked. But that's obviously a subjective thing, you know, it's obviously like a subjective thing. Mostly, you know, like nicely EQ'd and filtered, and the compression on them was solid. You know, they were easy to hear the vocals in the mix. The guitar parts, again, I've talked about the gain, but apart from that, they're fine. The drums, I think that the bass could have had a little more sort of like definition in there by maybe cutting a few of the low mids and getting it up into the higher range of the kick a bit more, just to give it a bit more kind of presence. But that, other than that, that's fine. You know, it was the piano strings and synthetic stuff were nicely put in that range. You know, like yeah, the levels were good for the most part. I wasn't a massive fan of how he entered into some of those choruses. It sounded a little bit kind of awkward. It would have potentially been nicer for me to have had all the instruments come in at once. And I'm wondering if we were using any sub drops or anything like that, if they were kind of overpowering the kit there and kind of removing the actual potency of it, you know. But that's okay. That's a personal thing. I think that outside of that, you know, there was dynamic range to it as far as I'm aware, and it was nice and loud without pumping, and that's effectively my review of this track, Relentless Pursuit. No, sorry, this is my review of You're Still Saving Me, a track by Relentless Pursuit. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show this some love via the various social medias and the YouTube page. Stay cool and stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as either hell more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands Out.